Epictetus lived by a strict internal code. 5 rules, really, though he never numbered them that way himself, about what to want, what to fear, and what to let go of. He taught them to hundreds of students in Nicopolis, politicians, future governors, young men sent by wealthy families to be, as he put it, cured of their own confusion. Then, in old age, he broke the 5th one completely. A friend of his was about to expose an unwanted infant, a common practice in the Roman world for a child no one intended to raise. Epictetus took the boy in himself, brought a woman into his home to help raise him, and became, for the first time in his life, a father. To understand why that decision doesn't actually contradict his teaching, you have to understand all 5 rules properly, not just the version people usually quote. So let's go through them. Rule 1. Sort what's actually yours. Most people who've heard of Epictetus know a simplified version of this rule. Some things are within your control, some things aren't. Draw the line and stop crossing it. That's true, but it's the beginner's summary of something more structured. Epictetus actually taught 3 separate disciplines, like a musician training the ear, the hands, and timing as distinct skills. The first discipline was desire and aversion, learning to want and fear only what's truly within your power. The second was action, learning to carry out your duties toward other people well, regardless of how they treat you. The third was assent, learning to examine your own judgments before believing them, because events themselves are neutral. It's the story you tell yourself about an event that determines whether it wounds you. Rule 1 isn't just stop caring about things you can't control. It's a full training system, 3 disciplines deep, and most people only ever practice the first third of it. Rule 2. Suppress desire until you understand it. Here's the instruction Epictetus gave beginners, and it sounds almost severe out of context. For a season, want nothing. Not forever. As a training exercise, the way you'd stop lifting heavy weight on an injured joint until it healed. Desire to Epictetus was reaching for something on the assumption that getting it would make you complete. That assumption is usually wrong and usually invisible to the person making it. So he told students to pause the reaching entirely for a while, long enough to see clearly which of their wants were actually about becoming a better person and which were just anxiety wearing the costume of ambition. This rule isn't permanent renunciation. It's a diagnostic tool. You can't tell the difference between a healthy want and a fearful one while you're still in the middle of chasing it. Rule 3. Redirect fear. Don't just suppress it. Aversion is the mirror of desire, the recoiling motion, and Epictetus didn't tell students to eliminate it either. Pause. He redirected it. Instead of fearing sickness, poverty, exile, or death, the things that had already happened to him personally, he told students to fear exactly one thing: acting against their own reason and character. That's the only danger in his entire framework that's always avoidable, because it's the only danger that lives entirely inside your own choices. This is the rule most people skip, because it's the hardest to apply. It's easy to say, don't fear losing your job. It's much harder to actually relocate your fear onto something you fully control, the way Epictetus did when Rome itself turned against him, and he simply moved his fear away from banishment and onto the only thing banishment couldn't touch: how he chose to respond to it. Rule 4. Love without demanding a guarantee. This is the rule that trips up almost everyone who reads Epictetus for the first time. In his handbook, he tells students that when you kiss your child, remind yourself you're kissing a mortal being, so that if the child dies, you won't be destroyed by it. Read quickly, That sounds like a warning against loving your own children too much. But Epictetus lived in a world where roughly 1 in 3 children didn't survive to adulthood. This wasn't hypothetical for his students. It was common enough that everyone in that room had either lived through it or watched a friend go through it. He wasn't telling them to love less. He was telling them something more precise. Don't let your love depend on a guarantee the universe never offered you in the first place. Love completely, while accepting, honestly, that you were never owed forever with anyone. That's not detachment. That's love, without the demand that reality owes you a particular outcome. He broke, which brings us back to the boy. Rule 5, the unspoken one underneath all the others, was something like, don't build your life around a dependency you didn't choose deliberately, with full awareness of the risk. Epictetus lived alone for decades specifically because he believed philosophy demanded his full attention, and family life would compete with it. Then, near the end of his life, he took in a child who might die of the same common illnesses that killed a third of Roman children, at an age where Epictetus himself was unlikely to see the boy grow up. He walked directly into the exact kind of loss Rule 4 warned could destroy an unprepared person. But here's why that's not a contradiction. He didn't do it blindly. He did it as a man who had spent 30 years practicing exactly how to hold something completely without needing a guarantee first. The rule was never, never love anything. It was, don't love something without understanding what you're risking. By the time he adopted that child, he understood the risk better than almost anyone alive. Breaking the rule wasn't failure. It was what mastering the rule actually looked like, put into practice one final time. So here's what these 5 rules look like away from ancient Rome. Sort what's actually yours in any situation, your effort, not the outcome. Pause your wanting long enough to check whether it's healthy or fearful before you chase it. Relocate your fear onto your own character instead of external circumstances. Love people fully while accepting you were never owed forever with them. And when you do finally let something matter completely, do it with open eyes, not blind ones. That's not a life with less feeling in it. It's a life where the feeling isn't quietly running the show without your permission. Epictetus died around the year 135, leaving almost nothing behind by the world's usual measure. But after his death, an admirer bought his old clay oil lamp, the same kind he'd once replaced without complaint, after a theft decades earlier, for 3,000 drachmae. A fortune for a piece of clay that once held nothing but a flame he read by. The lamp was never valuable. What was valuable was the life measured out beside it, 5 rules practiced for decades, and one exception made with total clarity right at the end. That's the quiet command of a mind that knew exactly what was worth holding, and held it completely. If you're building that kind of mind, subscribe. There's more of this ahead.